Okay, my name is Kevin. I'm the Director of Game Design at CCP. I work on EVE. Okay, so we aren't talking about a whole lot of new stuff right now. We are talking about things from the perspective of new projects, but not a whole lot of details. When I say we, I mean me. Berger is talking about some stuff that's new in his presentation. I'm mostly focused on how the teams are structured and how we kick off projects and what our priorities are. Steve will also give a presentation where he talks about some details, but I don't really have those.
So talk about what are some of the challenges when managing teams like that, because EVE Online is like a global game where, US, Europe, China, South America. Is there any challenge to that, or do you treat it just like any other game?
Well, there's a lot of challenges in managing a team, especially when you have not everyone in the same office. There's, of course, the obvious time schedules. Generally, we don't get into enough nitty-gritty story detail to worry about a whole lot of cultural differences, but we do think about that. Like, for example, the color white means something different in China than it does in America. We work a lot with Bing's team in Shanghai. They are sort of going through the process of making EVE Echoes, which I guess is a new project that I could have talked about for your earlier question. Mostly it's just communication, making sure that two teams aren't working on sort of like weird versions of the same project and we're not duplicating work, making sure that when we are doing a new project that we're laying down the foundation to continue working on similar projects in the future instead of sort of reinventing the wheel every 2 years, which is a habit that is really easy to fall into when you're running a game that's been around for quite some time.
Well, speaking of that, can you talk about how advancements in technology and how that plays into your game design, if it does?
Oh, sure. So EVE has been around for 16, 17 years. A lot of our technology was made a long time ago, and a lot of our technology is made since then, or relatively recently. And so we end up with sort of a snarl of like, when we want to work on some projects, we have to go back to tech that we haven't touched in a decade, right? And so a lot of our initiatives that we're trying to kick off this year and for the next year are going to be to try to build in force multipliers so that we aren't stumbling over these roadblocks all the time. Kind of clear them, modernize everything, sort of tie it all together so that we can be more agile and quick and develop faster in the future.
What do you think it is about EVE Online that has had it withstand the test of time these last 16 years?
Well, a lot of things. It's unique in that it just blatantly says what it is. It's very honest, right? Yeah. It's a very interesting mix of PvE and PvP. A lot of times you'll see in branding or in just people talking like EVE is 100% PvP, and it is from a certain perspective. I mean, everything eventually leads to PvP, but a good number of our players enjoy the PvE. And so it is, I think, the most even mix of PvE and PvP I've ever seen in a game. I'm just going to throw out some random numbers that aren't real. But like if you take a look at a normal MMO, you're looking at like maybe 10 to 15% PvP and the rest PvE, whereas EVE is more 60-40 or even 55-45. So it's just an environment you can't get anywhere else.
Like for someone like me, sometimes I just enjoy mining. I don't always want to go pirate. I just want to mine my ore and turn it in for money.
Well, a big part of playing in an MMO is low attention gameplay. I mean, sometimes you're out there, fighting 2-to-1 odds, and you're on the edge of your seat, and you're going to die in a second. But sometimes you also just want to continue to make progress on the game while watching television, yeah. Or listening to the radio, or talking to your significant other in the background, right? And it's important to stay engaged on that level, or to provide the opportunity to stay engaged on that level. Oftentimes I don't mine all that often, although I do a little bit, But oftentimes I go and just like hang around with miners and guard them or protect them. And it's not like you have to pay a ton of attention, but you have to pay enough attention that it's interesting, right? And then sometimes every once in a while it obviously turns into a great, cool, awesome moment where you're like sweating.
Yeah, that's the whole thing about EVE Online is you have this whole MMO universe where like if I want to mine, that's fine, and then there's guilds devoted to protecting people like me, and there's even some I can pay to just protect me to have an escort. It's an entirely player-driven economy and ecosystem where most MMOs, they take community in feedback, but this is its own thing. Like it's entirely community-driven, entirely run by people who play the game and how they want to play the game, whether it's mining, pirating, or protecting.
Yeah, I would disagree with you slightly, but really only on the semantics. It's not 100% player-driven. I'd say it's probably about 95% player-driven, but that's way, way more than any other game. And a lot of EVE uniqueness comes from that. The way the market works, the way the economy works, the fact that the market really is only based on a convenient way to trade things. Like, without the market, what is the value of ISK? Or like, you can go theoretically mine, produce ore, and build a ship with almost no ISK investment at all. The value of ISKs comes from being able to trade with other players, basically. It's just a convenient currency that lets the game be social.
So how do you like to play EVE Online?
I do embarrassingly poorly thought out things. I fly ships that are way too expensive into dangerous situations. I get blown up all the time. I get potted in a mining ship with a full set of slave mods.
Well, as long as you're having fun, right?
Yeah.
What's it like being here in Las Vegas every year to see your community and actually physically interact with them?
This is the first year I've come to Las Vegas to see the community. I've been to Las Vegas a few times because I'm American, but it's really interesting. Like, I've seen a lot of these people before, but not quite so condensed in one place. Yeah.
What can we expect next from EVE Online?
So in the past, we have oftentimes announced projects like well in advance, and our track record of hitting that isn't 100%, as I'm sure you have guessed. And so one of the reasons why I didn't answer your first question with a string of 5 or 6 projects is because we're adopting a policy that's more along the lines of we only talk about things when we're sure they're going to ship and when we're sure exactly when they're going to ship. And so we want to build sort of more trust with the player base. Not as though we don't trust them or they don't trust us, but we want to establish an environment where if we say in 6 weeks X is going to happen, everyone is 100% sure that it will. It'll help us marketing-wise. It'll help corporations plan. It'll help players have fun. It's just a good idea.